The UCI Women's World Cup has been dominated so far by the Netherlands. Despite a win for Emma Pooley of Great Britain, it's Annemiek Van Hooten who tops the table in the World Cup standings at the moment. The young Dutch woman is having her best season ever. The question is, will she be able to sustain this level of performance over the next 2 rounds? Her teammate Marianne may only be in her early 20s, but she's already a multiple world champion across a whole range of disciplines. She's been consistent so far this year and seems to be getting better and better. How long before she may take over the World Cup leadership? And the Swedish champion, riding for high-tech products, Emma Johansson. She's been there or thereabouts nearly every single race so far, but the race win is eluding her. Round 3 of the Women's World Cup moves to the flatlands of the Netherlands. Inevitably, it'll be wind and climate that affect the race here. And the Ronde van Drenthe, 132.8 kilometers around the Netherlands. Annemiek Van Hooten, the 4th Dutch woman to bring back the jersey for the World Cup leader to this race in as many years. This is another one of them twice. Marianne has come here as the leader of the World Cup. This time she just comes as former world champion and teammate to Van Hooten, hoping to keep that jersey in the team. Nicole Cook slowly coming into form, hoping for something a little better. This should suit her. She's got a strong kick. And a race like this demands a very technically gifted rider and one who can hold their own in the tight and twisting turns of the Ronde van Drenthe. A number of Dutch teams hoping to make a significant mark and of course win this race. The AA Drinks team, as well as a Dutch national squad including Daphne van Brandt, the cyclocross star, and of course Marianne Vos's own Nederland team, including Annemiek Van Hooten, who is of course the World Cup leader at the moment. Well, the pattern of this race is fairly standard. You can see these right angle turns left and right through the woods that surround Drenthe. This sometimes makes riding a little tricky. If the weather is slightly overcast or damp, they come from dry, wide roads into these very narrow, twisting roads, and often the overhanging trees leave a little damp on the roads. This is where it can become a little bit dangerous. You can see the block paving down here. It's not the same sort of cobbles as you get on the Tour of Flanders, but even so, if there's any damp whatsoever, it can prove to be a bit of a problem. However, along with the rest of Europe at this time of 2011, the Ronde van Drenthe was bathed in sunshine and no such problems for the peloton. Even so, it's narrow enough to have just one long line, and if you get caught out at the back of a peloton like this, as Lotto put the pressure on at the front, you can see a great big long pace line, and if you get caught out, you will be tailed off, and that will be the end of your day. There's a lot of nerves trying to keep up somewhere towards the front, because if the attacks go off the front, you could easily get distanced and not even know it as they go under the forest here. There is only one significant climb in the entire route. It's called the Vamberg, and it's a reclaimed landfill site. And the Ronde van Drenthe passed over the top of it for 3 passes. The last one was to come only 35 kilometers from the end. The general pattern of this race is that the peloton cruises along for the vast majority of the time, and up that last ascent of the Vamberg, the attacks start to happen. Belgian national champion just sitting on the front and controlling the pace. As you can see, all calm within the peloton. No attacks going yet. Far, far too early. You have to be extremely strong and extremely confident to go off the front at such an early stage. AA Drinks on the far right-hand side in the green with the yellow bands and the blue shorts. In the middle, high-tech products working for their team leader, Emma Johansson. And at the back, it's a pretty easy ride for most of the women in the peloton for the first half of the race here in the Ronde van Drenthe. 2 of the last 3 winners in this race have actually been Dutch, so the omens are pretty good. The pace being kept solid and gradually increasing. People now beginning a bit nervous and trying to get around to the front. Little cyclocross going on the right-hand side of the peloton. And some riders being forced onto the grass to get up into a decent position. Every time the peloton approaches the one hill in the entire race, the Vanberg, everybody needs to be in a half-decent place in order not to get tailed off. One of the big features of the Ronde van Drenthe can be the wind, but very luckily, hardly any breeze at all affecting the women out in the peloton. Here is the final ascent of the Vanberg, just about to arrive. 23 kilometers we are from the end of the race, and the pace really on now. The riders at the back beginning to lose contact with those at the front. All the big names massing ready for this attack. You can see the Vanberg in the background. And small punchy riders have to try and get away now. And it's Emma Johansson of High Tech Products who goes for it. A very, very good punchy classics climber. And trying to make this ultimate break away from the peloton. She's got a number of riders with her. Kirsten Wild from AA Drinks behind, the Dutch sprinter. And very powerful ruler. It's just short enough to be able to power over the top this one. And they've made a clean break. Grace Verbeek is the best of the rest, trying to drag the peloton over, and this is causing a few problems. Johansson pushing away at the front with Wild just behind her. And she looks like she's been joined by Martine Brass of Dolman's Landscape, and just behind Marianne Vos looks to be in the mix as well. There she is, Vos going through, and there is Brass right at the end. Well, the gap is not too big. The peloton determined not to let that one get away. It's only about 100 meters or so. And there's four big names who will not be allowed to escape if the peloton can do anything about it. They're not really working together. They're just letting Johansson do all the work here. So it's Johansson followed by Wild. And then Vos and Brass at the back. And they're really just not taking any turns on the front whatsoever. And Johansson looking at them as if to say, you got to come and work with me or not. Well, clearly not, because the peloton is coming back at them here. And immediately a counter-attack. It's Adriana Visser of the HTC High Road squad. And she's followed by Grace Verbeek. And then AA Drinks attacking from the front as well. They really want to show here, being a Dutch squad. And another little dig at the front. It's really all about testing legs at the moment. It's not about making a clean break. It's far, far too out, especially by yourself. If you can't get a big gap, you'd have to put in a much, much bigger attack than that in order to get away. But what it has done is succeeded in splitting the peloton. As you can see, there's about 35 riders in this group here. And about 250 meters back, there's another 30-odd riders, maybe slightly less. Oh, that's a little dig on the right-hand side of your screen by Marianne Vos, team leader of Nederland Bloit. That's a hard one. And immediately onto the tail of Vos goes Johansson. The Swedish champion not wanting Vos to get away and having a good look at her saying, what do you think you're doing here? Well, the fact is that Johansson is a little bit isolated, really. The teams from the Netherlands have a very strong lineup, and Johansson is a little bit isolated. And once again, another big attack coming in. And this time it's Annemiek Van Hooten, the World Cup leader, who's gone at the front. So Nederland Bloit quite happy to play the old 1-2 sucker punch. And AA Drinks and Kirsten Wild just keeping station behind and covering every move. Well, the peloton about 35, what's left of the peloton here. And easing up once again. Short dig after short dig. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if the second group on the road get back to this group. And it looks like that's going to be the case here. HTC High Road now on the front, trying to set the pace. This is a finish that suits a rider like Joko Teutenberg. Powerful sprinter. And they're coming in towards the finish in Drenthe now. Not too long to go as they run through the streets. There's a number of right-handed bends and left-handed bends. 90 degrees each of them as they run into the finish. And we finish up with a left-hander and a sprint. A long, straight sprint. This is where you need a lead-out train. You need a group of riders to get together and push the pace so high that other riders can't come past. That's exactly the tactic you can see here. Teams on the front pulling out the pace, and some real suffering going on at the back here. Not able to hold that pace at all. The peloton stretched right the way down the road now. And Lotto, Nederland Bloit, Garmin Cervelo all suffering at the back here. Only the sprinters teams will survive as they come into the finish here. The question is, will it be another Dutch victory? Annemiek Van Hooten has the World Cup leaders jersey at the moment. Will she hang on to it? This is the big question. Or will a little tiny nippy sprinter like Giorgia Bronzini zip out of this group and take a victory? She's got a tremendous kick on her. Has Nicole Cook got enough in the tank to be able to power home to victory here? It's just jostling for place as they come into the final few hundred meters here. And it's the Dutch national champion pulling it out at the moment. On the right-hand side goes one of the HTC High Road riders pushing home, and AA Drinks have get to the front. Going as hard as they possibly can. It looks like Kirsten Wild, who's going for the sprint now. Bronzini on the far right-hand side of your screen, the diminutive figure of the world champion. Wild in the middle. On the left-hand side, it's Marianne Vos. Vos takes the victory. Another Dutch victory in Ronde and Drenthe. The team leader of Nederland Bloit beats Kirsten Wild, the tall, rangy AA Drink sprinter. And Giorgia Bronzini, it was the world champion. It looked like she got third spot on the day. A fine win for Marianne Vos, showing just what a fantastic all-round rider she is. She can climb, she can sprint, she can time trial. There is nothing this lady cannot do. She's also been world cyclocross champion, and she's been a champion on the track as well. So, confirmation of the result. Marianne Vos wins ahead of Kirsten Wild and Giorgia Bronzini. Ina Teutenberg taking fourth spot after her team had worked hard to get her there. And in the overall rankings, Annemiek Van Hooten hangs on to the jersey ahead of her teammate Marianne Vos. Emma Johansson now in third spot ahead of Emma Pooley. And so we head back into Belgium, not this time to Flanders, but to the Ardennes, and the great weather continuing as the women contest the classic Fleche Wallonne race. The town of Huy, dominated by the fort built in 1818, is the host to this race, and Annemiek Van Hooten still in the World Cup leaders jersey. Terrific weather for this Fleche Wallonne race. 109 kilometers, and unlike the men's race, very, very little flat to go. You almost get into the hills straight away. Instead of doing 3 passes of the fearsome Mur de Huy, there are only 2 for the women's race, but it's only 109 kilometers long. Van Hooten looking very relaxed and comfortable, and very good in her World Cup leaders jersey. I wonder if she'd have expected to be there after 4 rounds of the World Cup. Out on the road, and some of the very few flat lands that they pass in. The men's race, of course, loops right the way out and then back in toward the Ardennes. The women take in far less of these flat lands and go straight into the hills. Well, not much action to start with. A couple of little attacks coming off the front. This is Amber Pierce of the Deodora squad, but quickly brought back. They're not going to let her go too far up the road, and really just testing her legs to see if she has it. Speculative attack, and no great force put into this one. And then a counter-attack coming, this time from Helene van Vliet and Adriana Visser. Visser of the HTC High Road squad at the front here. But again, everybody just testing each other, nobody committing yet. There's a lot of hills still to go. A whole fistful of categorized climbs that are going to really test the legs. Number 221 here, coming back through the cars following a mechanical, is Michel Eller of the Michela Fanini squad. And the pressure beginning to come on as we enter the Ardennes. You can see that the countryside is beginning to ramp up a little bit here. Some big names still just resting in the peloton, though, waiting as Michel Eller still fights to get back on. She's had a hard job getting through the cars to get to this. Quite strung out, some of this peloton now. Some of the big names not really too bothered at the moment. They still know that the hard work has to come. There's Naomi Cantilley of the Garmin-Cervelo squad alongside of Jacqueline Kroll riding for the USA. Kroll, one of a very strong unit brought by the USA for this race. I'm not surprised as well. A lot of national teams competing in the Fleche Wallonne because it is such a prestigious race. Claudia Hausler. And the Belgians really absolutely adore their bike racing. Even the TV production crews getting in on the artistic merits of a race. Big group trying to get away here, but really they started to work well together. Never really got it together. Sarah Mustonen of the high-tech squad. Monia Bracciali, the Italian champion. Adriana Visser. Amanda Spratt, the Australian. Then Chantal Black of AA Drinks Linton NL. Ashley Mullman is also in here of Lotto. And the last rider is Dufour of the Top Sport Vlaanderen squad. Looking a little ragged though, although they were working together, the through-and-off wasn't completely organised. And not really getting a huge advantage over the peloton. It's too big a race. As you can see the peloton in the background there. Two other riders trying to get across to this group. But as I said, just a little bit ragged. Probably could have done with getting a bit more organised a bit earlier. Visser looking over her shoulder. Seeing two more riders coming up. There is Mustonen at the back. And it wasn't long before the peloton was all back together. And the pace slowed right down again. Some of the big teams controlling things at the front. You can see the colours of the Netherlands national champion riding for Nederland Bloit, in fact the trade team. Gunnewijk just keeping the lid on things at the moment. And the pace beginning to up, and unfortunately leading somebody running a little bit wide here and taking two or three other riders off in the process here. Lauren Kitchen going down there right in front of us. That's a big, big crash. Krull, who was involved in that shot we saw earlier, there she is on the floor. But the worst off was Tetiana Rybachenko, number 159, who had a really nasty fall. Cut herself on some of the barbed wire on the side there. This is Edvig Patel being helped by her teammate Slamova to try and get back up to the peloton after that crash. Slamova absolutely shattered doing all the work on the front. Patel making the catch on the Côte de Boisseau at 50 kilometers to go. And whilst the TV crews are watching Patel working her way up towards the back of the peloton through the cars, you can see on the right, she's getting close to the back. Lots of riders being tailed off. One rider had gone off the front and the peloton had let her go. It was this rider here, the American Evelyn Stephens, riding for HTC High Road. And she quickly started to build up a lead. She's not one of the biggest riders in the peloton and is a good climber. But getting away from the peloton on the Côte de Boisseau and nobody going with her. The speculative attack was still about 59 kilometers to go. A little bit too far out maybe, they thought. The combined strength of some of the big teams are going to bring her back. But this time though, 1 minute and 10 seconds. That is a little bit too far to let a rider of Evelyn Stephens' quality get out ahead of the rest of the peloton. And it was Garmin-Cervelo doing a lot of the work on the front, along with the Cipollini squad, to try and bring things back. Lotto getting a hand in here as well. Naomi Cantilley doing a lot of the chasing for Garmin-Cervelo, bringing things a little bit closer. And you can see also High Tech there, wanting to bring this back. Emma Johansson still hasn't got a win this year, their team leader, and they desperately want it. First pass of the Mur de Huy. Don't panic, it's not a kilometre to go. It's about 25 kilometres to go for Evelyn Stephens, and her lead's cut down to less than 20 seconds. There you can see the peloton just behind. But she soldiered on, and once they had her in their sights, they just thought, well, we'll leave her there for a bit. There's no point bringing back a rider too quickly, because then a counter-attack goes very quickly indeed. 30 seconds at this point now, so she'd pulled out another 10 seconds, but sooner or later it was all going to be over. And on the Côte d'Aref, The final junction was made between the peloton just coming around the corner and the brave Evelyn Stephens, who'd been out for a fair amount of time. About 30 kilometers by herself. A brave attack, but it wasn't going to be. Still, she has riders behind her, and maybe, just maybe, she had something left in the tank in order to help her team leader, Judith Arndt, a little bit later on. This is not a finish for the sprinters. Joko Teutenberg may well have figured in the last race we saw at Ronde van Drenthe, but she won't figure in this one, or any of her ilk. The sprinters having difficulty competing on these sort of conditions. Very hilly. This is the run down into Huy itself, with about 5 kilometers to go. And Olga Zablenskaya going away. Using her very great descending skills to get ahead of the peloton and dragging another rider with her. The rider in question, Marianne Vos. And Vos, who's absolutely on fire, having won in Drenthe. Too big a threat. And the panic starts to be setting in behind, with the big teams thinking this is one we do not want to let get away. Zablenskaya doing all the work on the front. And Vos quite happy to sit there. And then Roxanne Knetemann of the Dutch squad giving it a dig as the two breakaway riders were caught and having a real go. This is really well-timed attack as they go into Huy. But as they come under the 1 kilometer to go banner, Knetemann is brought back. And you can see on the far left-hand side of your screen, Nicole Cook and Judith Arndt of the HTC High Road team. Cook on the left-hand side in the fluorescent yellow, riding that Cipollini bike, but it's super climber Emma Johansson at the front here with Judith Arndt of HTC High Road just behind her. Then Cook, then Vos. There goes the World Cup leader, Van Vleuten. And still, all the work being done by Emma Johansson. She's desperate to get this win. She is a really good climber, as we saw in the Olympic Games in Beijing, when the course is very similar towards the end. And this ascent of the Mur de Huy is the real killer now. You've got to have huge legs to be able to do this. You've got to have everything right on the day. And still Emma Johansson digs in at the front. She looks over her shoulder. She's very aware that just behind her is Marianne Vos. And behind her again is Judith Arndt. Surely the Swedish national champion has to kick now. There's one more corner really she can make a difference on. And then it flattens out a little bit. On the left-hand side of your screen, Arndt tries to dig in. Johansson still close against the barriers, fending off Marianne Vos, the former world champion. Judith Arndt struggling, I think, a little bit on the left-hand side of your screen, in the white of HTC High Road. Still, the Swede is pushing on. Has she got this one? Could she finally take a win? Oh, a huge attack by Marianne Vos. That is enormous. She's just left them for dead. Emma Johansson tries to respond, but Judith Arndt's got nothing. Can Johansson get up to the wheel, or is there still a big kick to come from Marianne Vos? Vos continues to drive on. She looks behind. Oh, if you could manage to look behind you, you've still got energy to spare. She drives towards the line. Another win for Marianne Vos, and Emma Johansson knows it. Back-to-back victories then for Vos. Terrific. And she shoots the fleche arrow into the air. Wonderful, wonderful win for the young Dutch woman, only 24 years of age, and just look at that, back-to-back victories, won a sprint, won a climb. Is there anything this woman cannot do? Well, a wonderful trophy to take home and a terrific victory for Marianne Vos of the Netherlands Bloit team. Second goes to Emma Johansson, third to Judith Arndt. Here's confirmation of that result. Fourth was Elena Bellato, a terrific ride by her. Fifth for Nicole Cook, and the World Cup leader, Annemiek Van Hooten, was sixth. So after this round, Vos takes over the leadership of the World Cup from her teammate Van Vleuten. Emma Johansson, still without a win, remains third. So the young and extremely talented Marianne Vos is on target for another World Cup win. Will she manage to keep up this super form?
Are you ready? UCItravel.com. UCItravel.com, your ultimate cycling travel partner.